To date, Kenyan-born Benjamin Kiplagat remains one of the finest steeplechase runners Uganda has ever produced. Tragically, his life was cut short in Eldoret, Kenya on New Year's Eve in 2023. In this episode, we look back at his remarkable career as an athlete and unpack the circumstances surrounding his untimely death. Benjamin Kiplagat Chemweno was born on 4th March, sometime in the 80s in Elgeyo Marakwet County, as the second-born child of Elizabeth and Koech Chemweno. We say sometime in the 80s because there are conflicting records about his year of birth. While most news sources and the World Athletics website reported that he was born in 1989, his eulogy stated 1984. We'll leave this detail up in the air because honestly, it could be anything that caused the discrepancy. It could be an error in his birth records or a personal choice he made during his athletic career, as it is common for some athletes to understate their age in order to remain competitive in their sport. Benjamin went to primary school in Kenya before joining Standard High School Zana in Uganda in 2000, but he dropped out 2 years later due to lack of school fees. After dropping out of school, Benjamin stayed in Uganda and started professionally nurturing his career as a runner in 2003. He set his eyes on running the long-distance 10,000 meters races, but his coaches guided him to shorter races, and finally he found his sweet spot, which was the 3,000 meter steeplechase. He represented Uganda on the world stage 3 years later at the 2006 World Junior Championships in China. In 2008, he represented Uganda at the World Under-20 Championships in Poland, where he came second, claiming the silver medal. From there, his trajectory was on the up. He would go on to represent Uganda in 3 consecutive Olympic Games: in China in 2008, London in 2012, where he reached the semi-finals, and in Brazil in 2016. Beyond the Olympics and the world titles, Benjamin also made his mark in African athletics. For example, he won a bronze medal at the 2012 African Championships in Benin. Sadly, after a successful career in athletics spanning almost 20 years, Benjamin's life would be tragically cut short on New Year's Eve, 31st December 2023, in Kimumu Estate, Eldoret, where he was staying. He was in Eldoret, which is a well-known training hub for long-distance runners from around the world, training for upcoming races scheduled for 2024. On the material night, 31st December 2023, a few minutes past 1 a.m., a man by the name of Kiprop, who also lived in Kimumu Estate, was woken up by the sound of something metallic being dragged on the tarmac road and a loud bang near his house. He went outside to investigate, and as he was getting out of his gate, he saw a young man dressed in a dark suit and a hat running away from the spot where a Toyota Hilux pickup had hit a ditch. Kiprop also noticed that underneath the car was a motorcycle, which was the metallic thing he had heard the car dragging on the road earlier. Kiprop was not the only one who had heard the noise and came out to check what was going on. He was joined at the scene by one of his neighbors called Joseph. At the front seat of the car, they realized that the driver, Benjamin Kiplagat, who was bleeding profusely, was deceased. Since they thought he had been involved in an accident, they called the traffic police. When the traffic police arrived at the scene, they determined that it was not a road traffic accident because Benjamin had multiple stab wounds on his chest and neck. They then called officers from the DCI who joined them at the scene. The DCI began investigating the murder immediately, and the first piece of evidence that blew the case open was the motorcycle which was under the pickup that Benjamin was driving. Through its registration details, they were able to determine that it was registered to 25-year-old David Ekai, who was a boda rider. They traced him to Kitale in Trans Nzoia County and arrested him on New Year's Day, 1st January 2024, which was just a day after Benjamin's murder. In David's house, the police recovered clothes, including trousers, shoes, and a scarf with bloodstains. Through CCTV footage recovered at the scene, the police had also determined that David had an accomplice. And upon his arrest, David led them to 30-year-old Peter Ushuru in Langas, Eldoret. Peter was also arrested and in his house, police recovered a blood-stained knife believed to be the murder weapon and blood-stained clothes, including a dark suit, a tie, and a hat. Following their arrests, authorities noted that the two were wanted criminals in the Kimumu estate area who had been tormenting residents for quite a while, and that the motive for Benjamin's murder was robbery. The CCTV footage mentioned earlier was provided by one of the residents in Kimumu estate. The footage showed David and Peter on a speeding motorcycle on the road at 1:10 a.m. At 1:11 a.m., the pickup that Benjamin was driving is seen on the road heading towards the direction the motorbike was headed. Benjamin was going back home after dropping workers who had been hired by his brother in their respective houses. 3 minutes later, at 1:14 a.m., the pickup is seen speedily heading back in the direction it had come from. As it negotiates the corner, you can see a motorbike that it's dragging underneath it. You also see Peter in a dark suit and a hat following the car, and just a few seconds past 1:14 a.m., the pickup hits a ditch and stops. Peter then beckons David, and shortly thereafter you see David running in Peter's direction. David then turns back and Peter follows suit shortly thereafter, and you can see him putting the murder weapon, which would be later identified as a knife, inside his coat. The police theorized that Peter Ushuru and David Ekai intentionally blocked Benjamin on the road with the motive of robbing him. A struggle ensued, during which they stabbed Benjamin multiple times. Despite his injuries, Benjamin managed to escape the scene in his vehicle, but in the process, he dragged David's motorcycle underneath his car as he sped away. Critically wounded and bleeding profusely, Benjamin lost control of the vehicle and crashed into a ditch, where he was later found deceased. An autopsy conducted on Thursday, 4th January 2024, would reveal that Benjamin succumbed to excessive bleeding caused by a stab wound to the chest. The autopsy further revealed that Benjamin had cuts on both his hands and arms. These injuries were consistent with defense wounds, indicating that he tried to fight off Peter and David during the attack. Benjamin Kiplagat was laid to rest on 11th January 2024 at his family's ancestral home in Trans Nzoia County. Fellow athletes from both Kenya and Uganda showed up to pay their last respects. They remembered Benjamin as a dedicated, humble and hardworking athlete who not only brought pride to Uganda on the international stage, but also mentored upcoming runners. The trial against Peter and David lasted just 9 months. Both men denied any involvement in Benjamin's murder. For Peter, who was first to take the stand, he told the court that on the night Benjamin was murdered, he was in Eldoret town enjoying himself at a club known as Belasco. After some time, he was keen on trying another hangout joint, and when he stepped out of Belasco, he met David, the boda boda guy. He paid him to drop him at a nearby lodge. When they got to a roundabout near the lodge, they found a man unknown to them standing on the road. The man stopped them and made a request to be carried on the same motorcycle. But Peter got off the motorbike, and the agreement was for David to come back for him after dropping the mysterious man at his destination. David left with the unidentified man, but never came back to pick up Peter, and Peter hired another motorcycle which dropped him near his house in Langas, Eldoret, where he says he spent the rest of the night. For David, he told the court that while he was en route taking the unknown man to his destination, the man suddenly drew a knife and attacked him. A struggle ensued, during which David claimed he was robbed of his motorcycle. He further stated that he tried to call the police, but no one answered. Essentially, his defense was that this unknown man who robbed him of his motorcycle was responsible for Benjamin's death. But Peter and David's defense quickly fell apart as the court found overwhelming evidence proving they were responsible for taking Benjamin's life. Firstly, there was the CCTV footage showing both men at the scene of the crime. In Peter's case, the footage even showed him tucking the murder weapon, a knife, into his coat after the attack. Secondly, forensic evidence confirmed that the blood-stained knife, later recovered from Peter's home, had Benjamin's DNA on it. Thirdly, bloodstains on clothes recovered from both Peter and David's homes also matched Benjamin's DNA. Lastly, the neighbor named Kiprop testified that he saw Peter running away from the scene, further placing him at the location of the murder. Following this damning evidence, on 5th November 2024, the High Court in Eldoret found Peter Ushuru and David Ekai guilty of the murder of Benjamin Kiplagat and sentenced each of them to 35 years imprisonment. The day before the sentencing, Benjamin's mother, Elizabeth Chemweno, delivered a deeply emotional victim impact statement. At around 70 years old, she stood before the judge and expressed the unbearable pain of losing her son, whom she described as the backbone of their family. She recounted how Benjamin had supported her and the family and how his brutal murder had left them devastated both emotionally and financially. She spoke of the sacrifices she had made to raise him and the heartbreak of seeing his life cut short in such a cruel way. Elizabeth pleaded with the judge for the harshest sentence possible, insisting that the two men who murdered her son should not be allowed to live. We extend our heartfelt condolences to the family and friends of Benjamin Kiplagat. May his soul continue to rest in eternal peace. Thank you for joining us today. If you appreciated this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to be notified when the next video is up. Until then, please take care, stay safe, and always trust your gut.